It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time to kill.
Love picks up Curry.
Kyrie Irving from downtown. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship.
Cleveland, this is for you.
Sexton works on Irving. He knocks it down.
Heat check time.
Allen to Garland, 1 second left for midcourt.
Strongest goal. Oh, what a rejection by Mobley.
And he throws the hammer down.
The shoot around.
I'm still in shock that the season is over. It sounded like Koby Altman feels the same. Watching what the teams are doing in the first round, it's hard not to wonder what could have been. How about you, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice to have some time off and to catch up on some of these playoff series. And to be honest, I feel bad because I picked Memphis to come out of the West, and now it looks like I've cursed them because they might lose to Minnesota, which isn't a good look.
Koby Altman had his end-of-year media exit interview. What did you make of his message?
I was really proud of his exit interview, and I found a lot of camaraderie in what he was saying to the media because it's what you and I discussed in the last episode. I've listened to quite a few other folks who were in the Cavs podcast kind of community out on Twitter and whatnot, and I feel like a lot of people were really ecstatic that the team played so well and beat all the odds. And I don't think we're down on the team or down on the season per se, but I think we were a little more blunt. And I think Koby Altman is feeling the same way. He talked about all the work he put into the offseason and getting in Markkanen and getting in Rubio. He expected this team to make the playoffs. He was not one of the people on the sidelines like a ESPN expert or a TNT analyst. He really thought this team would make the playoffs, and you could tell that he was frustrated and disappointed with the fact that they weren't there, and I found that enjoyable. Altman doesn't make a lot of appearances, so I'm always surprised by how at ease he is with the media and how blunt and honest he is, because a lot of GMs try to, hide or kind of obfuscate what their intentions are when they're speaking to the media. And he's not. He's very happy to tell folks his thoughts and to impress upon them where the team should be and what his expectations are of the future. So I found a lot of joy in that, in the sense of he understands what the team needs to do to move forward and where they're at now. So what did you think?
Yeah, just to kick off my thoughts on the overall tenor of it all, it's great. I've always loved Koby Altman. I think you have to respect how he was brought into the position, brought up through the organization. He has been there and seen winning basketball and been a part of the LeBron years. So he has an expectation that is greater than just somebody that's coming in to do the job. He is almost like a fan that gets to do that job every day, is how I see him anyway, and how he comes across when he is out in the media. And good on him, because if it's not true, it certainly seems that way. Gilbert has always had his GMs come out and explain how the year went. I just think Koby's passion and the way that he decides to highlight certain things after every year, you just kind of feel at ease. The last episode, I was saying the way that we played in these last two games makes you feel less confident that we're going to come into next year knowing what we're doing. That is a gut reaction and a quick reaction based on the emotion of the moment. I am fully going to admit that. But still, when you lose the kind of games that we did and we tank the end of the season, the last 20-some games of the season, there's not a lot of hope there. But Koby was detailing a lot of hope. And that's what I appreciated the most from what he had to say. Some of the things that he highlighted especially, and we're going to dive further into it. The thing that jumped out immediately to me was the praise that he gave for Colin Sexton. I have to be the first, I feel, to point that out because I am the biggest champion that I know of anyway, of the man around here. I really believe in Colin. It was only reinforced by everything that I heard Koby say today. And we've wondered that too. Everybody can look at what Garland does on the court and say, oh, see, we don't need Sexton. Okay, but that's on the court. And so much of this game is decided off the court. It's the time that they put in for their workouts. It's the time that they put in for their practices. It's the time that they put in to dedicate themselves to be the best. And I don't think I've seen that kind of dedication from a player on that level since LeBron. He's a mini LeBron when it comes to his dedication as a basketball player. And that's what Koby highlighted. And so I'm excited even just to know that the kind of praise that he made sure he gave in that conference means that they want him back and they want him to know how special and important he is and how much they recognize the work that he's put in. So that was the most exciting thing to me. How about you?
I thought that was totally cool how Sexton was still working out. I mean, maybe if you listened really closely, you could hear Sexton dribbling a basketball or something in the other gym.
The squeak of the sneakers in the background, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I thought that was really cool. I also was happy to hear him talk up JB. You know, you and I have had a few discussions about JB. Overall, we enjoy what JB does with the lineups, what he brings to the organization. And I found what Altman said was awesome in highlighting JB and talking about the big three lineup where JB is the one that brought that forward, where Altman kind of allowed a little peek behind the curtain where he was saying that JB brought this lineup to Altman and Altman wasn't too sure. He was kind of like, all right, sure. It's 3 7-footers. We'll try that. Right. And he trusted JB to at least try it, see if it worked. If it didn't work, try something else. But he trusted JB's gut instinct as a coach. And that's also really cool to see because that's something that this Cavs franchise has not really been great with is GM coach expectations and relationships. It's been a little off. So that is refreshing to see. And then the other story that I thought was really cool was when Evan Mobley got drafted, he went out to the summer leagues during the offseason out in Vegas, and Altman talked about how the first stringers, the varsity squad, was out there to watch Mobley play. And that is, Sexton, Garland, Jared Allen, Markin was out there. I believe he mentioned that, even Dylan Windler, all those guys who are young, really major core aspects of the team were out to see Evan Mobley play. That just warms your heart because we've all been in situations where you feel awkward and kind of trying to figure stuff out. And Mobley's one of the awesome things about him is he clearly is comfortable in his own shoes. Mm-hmm. But just to see that these guys that have been there for 2, 3, 4 years with the Cavs are there just to see him play and to bend his ear and to see what he's all about. I thought that was really cool because you can tell that kind of moved over to the season because that's the major theme that we've always heard is these players love playing for each other. They love competing with each other and winning basketball games with each other on the floor.
Great points. I think that one of the things that stuck out to me that he mentioned immediately about JB was the culture that he created coming into the season. And I think that is the strongest point that JB seems to have as a coach, that he can really build the foundation to come into the year in the right way. The last 2 seasons have started so unbelievably strong. Even with having these difficult records, we've just really come out and impressed. And I think that's the diligence, the time spent that he puts in, and the way that he gets everybody to buy in and then, do the things necessary to work on certain skills to build a better team. And yeah, the fact that they love each other the way that they do, love playing with each other the way that they do, if they have inner turmoil in this team, I can't see it. So it's another reason why we got rid of Kevin Porter Jr. It's no offense to the man, but look at the culture that they've been trying to build there. And that's part of it. And there's no reason for anybody to look at what's going on in that locker room or in practice or on game day and not take it seriously and not say, these people are all in. I want to go and play for an organization that's going to dedicate themselves in this way. So JB is the best coach I think we've ever had when it comes to that kind of culture. And I want to point out quickly a real life example of that, which is the story you just shared about Evan Mobley and how everybody was so supportive and going and watching his practices and cheering him on. What was the organization like, and how did they treat Colin Sexton when he came?
Not good.
They made him a pariah. They treated him like the reason why LeBron left. And that's culture. The coaches, the organization, that's on them. They should have stopped that immediately. Those are grown men down that line that know better, and they should not have bullied a kid coming out of college that had no business being held responsible for any of that. And so, especially how bitter these millionaires that are upset that LeBron didn't stay and continue to play with them. How about you get better? Mm-hmm. Getting upset at a kid out of college. So anyway, and then the last thing is the pieces that were added, I think, is another thing that he mentioned. As a GM, he's the one who was involved in getting those pieces, and yet he's still excited that they were able to pull the guys together that they have in the last year with Markkanen, Mobley, Allen. The future is bright in Cleveland, and that was certainly front and center with what he had to say.
What do you think the Cavs need next season? Another player, coach, or just a change in strategy?
I'm still shell-shocked a little bit that the season's over. I truly believe that we have the pieces required to make a run at the finals right now. Other than inexperience on the team, that's about it. And then the ability for us to stay healthy. Right now, we're so different at the end of the year because of the injuries. Even just the loss of Rubio alone. I almost can't get my head around yet what we're supposed to look like without him next year, even though I saw what we were without him. I guess it's because I didn't like it, So I suppose if we could add a player back, I would want Rubio, or at least the dynamic that we're able to get out of him. I miss that. It all depends on what we decide to do with Colin Sexton. If we split his minutes more off the bench and use him more like a sixth man, then we may not miss Rubio in that way. I think we'll always miss Rubio in some way. He's a great player and a player's coach in a lot of ways. I think he probably will be a coach one day. And so strategy-wise, other than I really didn't want to see us give up the ghost on defense the way that we did, the fact that the last almost 2 months it became something that we didn't really emphasize anymore. And I understand that we were probably gassed. We're not going to go out there and go, hey, our guys are tired. You're not going to say that. But I think that it makes a lot of sense with one of the hardest records in the league and how hard we played, and the fact we were a top 5 defense for most of the season. Falling off that cliff was disappointing. So we have to, if there's a strategy change, it would be to try to pace ourselves a little more. Maybe not come out and feel that we have to do it all in the first half of the year, especially when you know that the first half of the year is so hard. And I have no idea what our schedule will look like so far next year. But you have to believe that it's going to be hard because they gave us a hard schedule when we came in as a not great team. And we've proven that we're a better team. So why would it be not a hard schedule? So maybe we'll finally be gifted some type of luck there. I'm not sure that I've given you a clear answer, but what would you say here?
I think those are both great answers. I think pacing themselves makes a lot of sense. They need to figure out how to have energy in the tank for after the All-Star break for sure. And I also think Rubio might come back, but he might not be available till midway through the season. So they still need some dynamic type of option off the bench that helps run that second unit. And Altman brought up how he felt like when he would come onto the court, it was almost a completely different type of team when Rubio was leading the second unit. And that's what the Cavs need. I think they need to almost have two identities, especially if they keep a 7-foot lineup, is a pure defensive smothering first unit, and then that second unit stylistically plays a little bit differently, almost like in European basketball, led by a player like Rubio or somebody else that has that skill set. That's difficult, but if they can bring in another guard that can at least spell Sexton and Garland with a different type of style of play like Rubio, I think that is helpful. I believe that Altman wants another young talent. He brought it up in the press conference. He was asked if he was considering trading his first round pick because technically they already did to Indiana, but they got it back. And Altman didn't really take the bait. And he essentially was like, no, our draft guys are doing all their work. Our people are looking at the young players to see who we can choose. So I think they're going to target a young player, and I'm hopeful that it is a wing type of player that puts pressure on Okoro and Lamar Stevens and Cedi Osman for playing time. They need somebody, just like every team needs somebody, that rare, quantifiable 3-and-D player. They need somebody that can shoot the three consistently closer to 38, 39%, and is a defender who can be relied on every night. And unfortunately, the Cavs just don't have that right now because of the fact that Okoro is more of a two-guard, and Lamar, he is their second-best defender, but I wouldn't call him a pure 3-and-D because he almost plays the power forward really almost better than the small forward. The last thing I would say, and this is a little out of left field, and I'm saying this only because they're such a young team, they need somebody that people will not mess with. They need a guy on the floor that is an enforcer, almost a Kendrick Perkins-like player, who is an older veteran who these other Eastern Conference teams will be terrified of him coming onto the floor because he will be a bruiser. He can even be a small forward who just is a guy who adds confidence. You're seeing this right now with Patrick Beverley. Minnesota was considered a soft team. Patrick Beverley is a shooting guard who can guard the 1 through the 3, who people do not want to mess with. He's an extremely physical, great defender, and will show that on the court and not back down from anybody. And I don't think these guys back down, but I do think because they're so young right now, I want to have at least one guy on the floor who will not get shell-shocked from a more physical team, like a Miami, like a Milwaukee. Guys that they know that this one dude just is going to come out and body up on people.
I wonder as well, just all the way back to one of the things you said early on, I wonder as well if Rubio's career will be over. That's a very difficult injury to come back from twice from the same leg. And so best of luck to you, Rubio. I'm not saying I'm not rooting for you. I just think that at your age and with that injury happening twice, I was surprised we got what we got for you when we traded you. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that made him so great on our team was that he had the mentality of a starter at running the second unit. And that's what we need. I've said for many years to you that you need a guy coming off the bench that runs that second unit with the same intensity and the same expectations as the starting five. Then you'd have a team that is very formidable no matter if they're your original five are out there or your bench or even your third string, because you've got a cohesive kind of nature to your subbing in and out, and you've got a field general on the floor whether the starters are out there or not. I wonder about picking up another young guy to fill the role that you're talking about as far as a wing player or a defender. I lean more towards your last comment, which is to pick up a bruiser, a veteran, somebody that could come in and maybe play that role. I enjoyed Taurean Prince when we had him. I'm not saying he's the perfect person for what we're talking about now, but he was maybe closer to what we currently have, and I'd like to see them go for another type of player like him, because even just looking at his stats with what he's doing with the Timberwolves, he's always averaged around 20 minutes a game. He's always averaged around 10 points a game. He shoots 42% from field, and he shoots about 37% from three. And that's a serviceable guy off your bench. You're not going to have to pay him a crazy amount to keep him on your team. You're not going to have to push some of these other guys minutes just to get him out on the court. So that's where you pick up a young guy. Maybe in the first year, you don't have to give him much. But eventually, especially with where we're going to pick him, he should be talented enough that he'll start to vie for Okuro's position or, like you said, Cedi's position. Cedi will possibly go. So, and we've talked about for years, he may be a better trade piece than an actual piece on our team. No offense. But I think Okuro is just sad to me because he's that piece that has gotten kind of forgotten about. And are we going to develop him or are we going to let him go and find out what he is somewhere else?
I agree with all of that. I think the mentality, too, of having somebody who's essentially a starter come off your bench is something that obviously worked really well this season and what they really needed the previous season because they needed that type of leadership. They need Okoro, obviously Mobley, and they need Lamar and maybe Dean Wade, all four of those guys to take other types of leaps. Doesn't have to be giant leaps, doesn't have to be Darius Garland level leaps, but Okoro, I think, needs to take the biggest of all of those. Mobley is so much further along. For me, I just think he needs to get swole. Man needs to work out and get more physical. And Okoro, I think he needs to kind of figure out more stuff. And it's really up to the team to challenge him and to make sure that he's coming along in the right way. We've talked about a third ball handler, another point guard and whatnot. If Okoro improves his handle enough, that's who that is. He has the size and strength of like Chauncey Billups when he was with the Pistons. If he was able to have a better handle, that would bring up his floor so much because they could rely on him in rotating the offense because he could actually break down the defense better.
The final seconds.
Miami is up 3-1, and Boston is up 3-0. Do you think the Cavs would have played better in these playoff games?
Okay, I'm going to say yes with a caveat. If Jarrett Allen would have come back at 100%, he said he was about 60 to 70% after the Atlanta game. If he was 100% healthy, I think the Cavs would have shown up a little bit better in these games. Mainly because we would have had that physicality. We would have had the 7-footer lineup that has made us unique. And I think Atlanta and Brooklyn just don't have many other tricks up their sleeves. Brooklyn is 2 players, and Atlanta right now is essentially Trey. And if Allen was further along in his health and the Cavs had Garland working with all those 7-footers, the Cavs would have had more of a chance to rely on more players as opposed to just Darius.
Are we talking about the team that we saw in the last game of the year? Or are we talking about the team that they should have been, barring all the injuries and everything? So if you're talking about the team that they should have been on paper, yeah, I think we would have been in the top 3 teams in the East this year. But seeing the way that we played in the last 2 games of the season and the play-in, no, we would have been embarrassed. Allen clearly was more injured than they wanted to let on. He was playing with one hand out there, still impressively so. But I don't think that you would have had him out there in the first series. The only reason why they had him out there because it was because of the last game and they tried something. They needed his energy and his effort on the court. I think we are where we're supposed to be, sadly, which is why I started the podcast the way that I did. I'm still in shock that it turned out this way, but I watched the last 30 games of the year. I know why we're here. We don't deserve to be there, and we'd just be getting embarrassed right now.
Some media members have suggested that Cedi might not be with the team next season. Do you think that is the right move?
Sorry, Cedi. You probably would never agree to come onto our podcast if we asked you for an interview. Or at least if you have any idea what we said about you over the years. But truly, you're a valuable player, especially the way that you've played this season. You had a fall off again towards the end of the year. I don't know if that's, again, conditioning and the fact that many players, including Cedi, had to play extra minutes due to injury issues throughout the season. I can't speak to any of that, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and pretend that those things were the kind of the biggest factors of why we saw him kind of fall off in the last 10 games. But Cedi has always, I think, had too much hype around him, and that's not his fault. He doesn't create that hype. The fact that they decided to call him Jedi, I think, is a bad idea from the beginning because, yeah, come on. Massive expectations from a man named that. But I do think that he's a very valuable piece, and he's one of those players that, unfortunately, the way that we're built now, we may not need him moving forward. It just depends on what we envision ourselves coming into the season. So, he's always been one of those players that I think is a valuable piece. And the more that his contract whittles down, the more it's easier to move him. That 4-year deal we gave him made it a little harder at first.
I think there's a really good chance that it's kind of his time to move on. I think there are other teams that could use his skill set in ways that also won't ask him to be a second string point guard or to play power forward occasionally. I think the Cavs have done right by Cedi for sure. They've given him a contract. They've given him a lot of playing time. But there have been instances where he's been asked to do stuff that it's just not his bag of tricks. So if he's able to come into an organization where he's only asked to come off screens and shoot and to play solid defense, I think he could play, for 5-6 more seasons on a really good team. But we tend to get injured and we tend to lose guys on a regular basis. And Cedi stays healthy, which is a bonus. But when Cedi is a backup power forward sometimes and is out there running your offense, that's not a good look. I also think with the draft coming up and the need and the value of wing players, there's a really good chance the Cavs draft or grab other wing players, and that puts Cedi in the hot seat.
Are you happier that LeBron isn't in the playoffs, or that Larry Nance is?
I'm going to say I'm happier for Larry Nance. I'll take the high road. Because Nance got traded again. So he got traded to New Orleans, who I did not think they would make the postseason. So I'm just happy that he's actually getting the chance to play in the postseason, because we traded him to Portland, where I thought he had a chance of getting to the postseason. Portland is not looking great. They're in a bit of a retool. And then he got traded to New Orleans, where I thought they're still having issues because Zion is maybe not going to play basketball ever again. But that means that Larry Nance gets to play because they play the same position. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy for Larry Nance. He deserves to get as much money and playing time as he can get in his career.
I can't be happy that LeBron isn't in the playoff. I mean, I'm not going to be petty. Because honestly, I was more upset that he made the playoffs with the Heat. And if he had missed time with them, that would have made me very happy, would have made me giddy. But the Larry Nance, he's a stand-up guy, and I really wanted what he wanted for himself, which was to play the rest of his career in Cleveland. And those kinds of guys, you do need them. He's a bench player through and through, most likely, unless you're on a team that you just don't have enough talent and he's got to be out there. But that's not a knock on him. It's tough to be a starter or even a bench player in this game. So Larry Nance is one of those glue pieces and one of those effort guys that I want every day of the week, especially knowing that he has such passion for Cleveland and such passion for the Cavs. He's always going to be a person that I'm going to value. And even more so than LeBron, because LeBron did it, I think, out of a career opportunity. I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but he was the kid from Akron that said, well, I'm from here. And then he left and said, well, I wasn't from Cleveland, I was from Akron, right? Mm-hmm. He disassociates himself the minute he can. Larry has never disassociated himself. So I've got to be happy for the man that he was traded away from a team he loves and still playing the game and putting in the effort that that I think we expect from him, and he got to go to the playoffs this year, so good for him.
Scottie Barnes was named Rookie of the Year. Was Mobley robbed?
Just looking at the stat lines, yes, they're close to each other, but Mobley averaged more points and more blocks, and they're not playing the same position. The fact that Mobley almost averaged 3 assists, Barnes had, almost 4, but I would expect that as the ball kind of rotates through him and rotates through the offense more than a power forward would. Mobley should have gotten this award. I'm trying to take off my Cleveland cap, my Cavs cap here. I'm trying to be objective as a basketball fan, not a Cavs fan. And he was lights out, the most impressive of the rookie class this season, especially the fact that he wasn't taken number 1. And if he has another season, not even another season, but if he continues to progress the way it seems that he will, he's going to be one of those players that you will have to say, oh, they should have taken him number 1. And so, yes, I think he was robbed. No, hold on. Robbed is a hard word. I don't think he was robbed. I think it was unfortunate that it was as close as it was, because at that point, it was more of a popularity contest for why he lost it, and why people had already kind of solidified their expectations of what Scottie Barnes should be. And so because it was neck and neck, he was robbed, quote unquote.
The frustration I have as a fan is I felt like the tide for Scottie Barnes being Rookie of the Year, that it swayed into his favor when Mobley got hurt at the end of the season, which makes zero sense to me, because you're making a comparison to a player who now has Pascal Siakam fully healthy on his team and Fred VanVleet fully on his team. Oh, and by the way, Mobley is hurt and Jared Allen is hurt, and your backup point guard is gone for the season. Oh, and your other backup point guard gone for the season. So all of a sudden, oh, Scottie Barnes, the Raptors, they're just playing so much better when he's on the floor. Yeah, Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet are both pretty freaking good. So that just makes sense. Mobley, another stat I'll put up here, is the Raptors were 5-3 in games without Scottie Barnes. The Cavs were 4-9 without Evan Mobley. So who had the greater impact? Mobley did. That is the overall frustration that I'm seeing from Cavs fans and Cavs Twitter and NBA Twitter for the people who actually understand how basketball is played. Rookie of the Year is for the rookie that has the greatest impact. So I would, I'd put Cade Cunningham in there. I'd put the kid Green for Houston that was there. Obviously, I think Barnes is deserving. I think he's a very good player. However, the Pistons didn't make the playoffs or the postseason. The Rockets were one of the worst teams in the NBA. The Raptors made the postseason and are currently playing the Sixers. They did that last year. They made the postseason last year. So where's the jump? The Cavs were arguably the biggest surprise in the Eastern Conference, possibly the NBA, because of the play of Evan Mobley. Jared Allen improved and Garland improved. But Mobley, he's beyond a glue guy. He helps run their offense and pilots their defense at times as a rookie. Now, I say all this at the same time. Go ahead, Scottie Barnes. Have your Rookie of the Year. Because I expect Evan Mobley to have many larger awards throughout his career down the road. So enjoy, because I don't think it's that big of a deal to Mobley.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!